Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We'll be starting the session in about 5 minutes. We'll just wait for everyone to join until then. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And Ankur sir, are you there? Yeah. Okay. So, good morning, everyone. And I thank you all on behalf of the Backwaters Committee for joining us as we kickstart the Business of the Decade and Beyond speaker series, which is the main theme for this virtual edition of our Business Summit. With the shocking end to the year 2020, this year we decided to consolidate a decade worth of shifts, which has made us witness technological changes, fundamentally new business models, and the new norm of uncertainty in the business landscape. So, strides in technology such as AI, AR, cloud computing, blockchain have further stretched the scope of possible transformations that might happen in the future. So to start with the first talk of this series, I welcome our guest speaker, Mr. Ankur Maheshwari. Over a career spanning 2 decades, Mr. Ankur has provided advisory support to a myriad of new and established institutions to help them sail through this rapidly changing digital business environment. He has been the CTO of Gear Bubble, which is a powerful new e-commerce platform for charities, fundraiser artists, and startups. Currently serves as the CEO of Decode, which has internationally delivered more than 30 end-to-end blockchain application under his leadership. Welcome, Mr. Ankur. Over to you.
Hey, thank you for the introduction, Nitish. I must address something before I begin. So, I'm really glad to see the MBA is interested in technology. It is my belief that in order to be a good manager, you also need to understand what's happening underneath. And I'm glad to see that I'm addressing such a strong, vigorous audience who are engaged actively in something as complicated as blockchain technology. So a quick introduction. I'm Ankur Maheshwari, and I lead Decode's corporate and end-to-end development practice. I have been personally responsible for delivering more than 40 blockchain applications across the world. I've been lucky to work with both startups and established companies, helping them navigate the market turbulence caused by this rapidly changing digital technologies. So how did I meet blockchain? So my foray into blockchain traces back to 2014 when I was a CTO, and I left that position to assemble a group of technical architects and consultants. And I saw that new age businesses wanted to solve their problem using cutting edge technologies. This was the time when I realized that blockchain was about to break out from those niche technical circle and about to enter mainstream. Now, my first encounter with blockchain was obviously Bitcoin, as so many else's. So back in 2014, one of our customers wanted to pay us with BTC. BTC is Bitcoin. So I started looking into it. And honestly, I loved what I saw. So I read the paper, and what I saw was something that I thought could revolutionize a lot of stuff that was happening around. So then we pivoted. We pivoted to become a one-stop blockchain solutions provider. And since then, we've helped both new and established businesses to utilize blockchain technology and achieve amazing results. Today, we are an organization of 250 plus developers solving challenges globally. Now, when entering this business, one of the biggest challenges we faced were those of use cases. Now, because of the very nature of technology, it is very, very important that we apply it in the right situation where it legitimately generates some value. However, most of our customers who came us with use cases that really did not have that real world application. Most of the startups simply wanted to integrate the technology because it was the buzzword and it attracted more investors. And I think it was late 2017. At that time, ICOs were probably the easiest way to raise funding. All you need to do was launch some sort of an altcoin, have blockchain in your name, and you had people coming all over to invest in you. But since most of these startup projects or ICOs were not providing any value, 90% of them failed. Now that this initial unrivaling offering of blockchains have vanished, this initial euphoria is gone, I can see that the feasibility of the technology is being tested in almost every major sector now. But even now, industries are struggling to understand as to how adopting blockchain in their current business process will benefit them. Most of these business, they have this odd fear that if they want to integrate blockchain solution into their existing process, it's going to be a costly affair and will probably burn a huge hole in their pocket. So to understand this context of blockchain in the context of business, we need to understand what it is and what are some of the issues that we are facing. Now, if you're attending this session, chances are that you already know about the technology, or you must have heard about it, or at least have a slight idea about how blockchain works. But now there's this weird issue about the definition of this technology. Every person in this space phrases it differently. And surprisingly, almost all those definitions are correct as well. So I remember when we were pivoting to provide these blockchain solutions, we used to read countless articles, books, we used to talk to several people in the industry, but we could never find a standardized definition of what blockchain is. And this was a major issue because a big part of what I do requires explaining blockchain in simple terms to my fellow CEOs, CTOs, CIOs. So one of my biggest takeaway from this was that is this probably the reason that most of the established businesses or enterprises had reservations about this technology? You know, that classic fear of the unknown. Anyways, so I kept reading up on blockchain and I found an interesting way to understand this technology. Now, this is probably the first time that you would be associating the prisoner's dilemma with blockchain. However, I thought it was important to talk about this because blockchain is all about trust, right? And prisoner's dilemma sort of explains that in detail. So there is this game theory experiment called the prisoner's dilemma. And game theory is a branch of mathematics that studies the strategic interaction among rational actors. The prisoner's dilemma is an experiment analyzing game theory that shows why a group of people might have a problem cooperating, even when it seems like they'd be all better off by cooperating. So in this thought experiment, there are two criminals who are brought for questioning for their suspected participation in a crime. Both of them are in a separate interview rooms. And let's assume that they are called prisoner A and prisoner B. And let's assume that potentially they are facing life imprisonment. Now in the scenario, if each one can choose either to rat or they can choose to stay quiet. They have both these options. So now the cops, they put on several conditions. If prisoner A and prisoner B both stay quiet, they both walk free. That is clearly the best outcome for both of them. However, if A talks while B stays quiet, then the cops put B away for life and they let A off with only 3 years in jail. And the same is true if B talks as well. However, they put another condition that if both of them end up talking, they both go to jail for 10 years, which is not the ideal situation, but it is better than having a life term. So imagine you're prisoner A. You don't know what's going on in B's mind. Logically, you will find out that it's better to talk because if you both stay quiet, you go get to leave. However, if B talks and you stay quiet, you go away for life. On the other hand, if you talk, the worst thing that can happen to you is that you get 10 years, and 10 years is better than life. So in situations like this, the cops end up with everyone talking, even though they'd all be better off if no one talked. Why? This is because of the lack of trust between the prisoners or the parties. And because of this lack of trust, they end up paying a heavy price. Now, industries are moving towards digitization. And most of these industries are finding themselves in somewhat similar situation as to what we explained. Automation has had probably the greatest impact on how businesses operate. It has led to them cutting their cost, increasing their productivity, speeding up their work. But despite all of this digital transformation, businesses have time and again struggled to automate the foundation of trade. And what is this foundation? This foundation is trust. Every person on this planet who has ever made a purchase, let's say from buying something of OLX to purchasing a house, I'm sure you must have encountered how complex it is for two parties to complete a transaction. Funds must be verified, disclosures must be made in writing, asset transfer needs to be done, so on and so forth. This is where I believe businesses have a few questions that still need to be answered. Some of these questions that we regularly face is, does this party actually and legally own the asset that I want to buy? Will this party actually give me the amount that they promised? How can I ensure that this party delivers the good once I give them the money? These are some of the questions that you regularly face while making a transaction. Now, usually these questions are answered by third parties. And that is the biggest issue. The lack of trust between two participating parties and this forced reliance on third parties have actually led to a lot of complicated structures. And this is where blockchain can come in. This is where blockchain can come in and it can replace third parties. So the simple standardized definition of blockchain from what I have reduced is automated trust. Blockchain can significantly reduce the operational frictions, the costs, the headaches associated with all these business processes. And I think it's a key technology that companies would soon start to associate with financial services, supply chain, energy, healthcare, retail, automotive, and several other sectors. So to me, in a single word, it's blockchain. In 2 words, it's automated trust. In 3 words, it is decentralized distributed ledger. And in 4, it's unalterable record of transactions. So we went through a lot of jargons there. Let me go a little bit deeper and explain the meaning of some of those jargons. So the idea is not to understand the letter of the law, but rather the spirit of the law. For the sake of this session, we'll expand the definition to include the major features of the technology. Now, blockchain in its simplest form is a decentralized and distributed ledger. What is a ledger? Ledger is a term that you actually take from accounting. So a ledger is a sort of notebook. It could be digitized, it could be manual, where you keep record of all the transactions. So what does distributed ledger mean? When all the parties have the same copy of the ledger, it's called distributed ledger. So, and what does decentralization mean? When no single party has complete control over how the ledger operates, it's called as decentralized. So think of a network of participants with each one owning a computer or a machine or some sort of digital machine. Now the idea is that at any moment in time, simultaneously, every member of that network holds an identical copy of the database on their machine. So that's the essential principle basically. So they all have the exact same copy of ledger on their machine. And information is potentially available to all participants at any point in time, and no one could alter it without everybody agreeing to that alteration. So breaking down this definition as a database, you can probably understand it in 2 parts. The first is that it's a cryptographically secured database or distributed ledger. This means that whenever data is written into the blockchain or into the ledger, you need to have the right cryptographic keys. Now, cryptography is a very, very complicated subject, so we won't go into that. But in general, you probably need to have understanding of 2 basic concepts, which is there's something called as a public key and there's something called as a private key. A public key is a key that is visible to anyone, whereas a private key is a key that only you possess. And if you want to make alteration to the blockchain, you need your private key. So say person X cannot come in and he cannot or she cannot make alteration into the blockchain on your behalf. Secondly, this database is shared across either a public network or a private network. Yes, you can even have private blockchains. In fact, private or permission blockchains are what are the most interesting for the enterprises. So you can have a private blockchain in pretty much any industry, like say banking. And in banking, you would have a sort of distributed ledger where everybody agrees to a particular copy of the ledger. Plus, you also get to know who gets access to data at what time. So you can have all those governance control as well. Now, another important term that is generally associated with blockchain and is quite hyped is smart contracts. So, just give me 1 second, I think. Not sure. Is my screen visible? I'm assuming it is. So another important.
It is visible, sir.
Okay, sorry. So another important concept that comes in blockchain is smart contracts. So smart contracts, which many say is a misnomer because they're not really smart. They're just computerized transaction protocols that self-execute the terms of a contract. So if we have to simply define smart contract, they are autonomous if then else logic, which are written on blockchain. And hence, they narrate all the properties of the technology. So smart contracts allow users to solve common problems in a way that minimizes trust. Simple examples of smart contracts are, say, if you want to transfer property, or if you want to make some sort of a bet on a fantasy sport league, or you want to do revenue disbursement via micropayments. Think of royalty payments. You want to disperse some amount of money based on certain existing conditions. So all of that could be coded into a smart contract that everybody agrees to. And then once a particular event happens, that disbursement automatically happens based on the logic that has already been baked into the smart contract. So you have several use cases of this smart contract. So think of any computer programming logic that you would have, and then you would give it all the properties of blockchain, like unalteration, like decentralization, like distribution. So that's where smart contracts come into the picture. Now we've been talking about permissioned and public blockchain. So let's get a little detail into it. So the first thing we'll get into is the public blockchain. Now the blockchains that you read about, they're mostly all public blockchains, and they make up most of the market's digital currency. These public blockchains allow pretty much any user to come in and create their own address on the blockchain. So there is no need for any sort of KYC being done. All you need is some sort of a wallet, which are easily available to come in and then interact with this blockchain. So you go in, you create your own public key or a private key, and then you get your own address. And think of that address as your bank account number. So for example, if you're interacting with the most famous blockchain, public blockchain, which is out there, Bitcoin. So you go to Bitcoin, you create an address there, and that sort of becomes your bank account. So in public blockchain, almost everything is transparent. And public blockchain are completely decentralized. So when we say completely decentralized, what it means is that anybody can come in and they can participate in the blockchain. So for example, the way you can go in and create your own account on the blockchain, similarly, you can also go in and start participating in the mining process in the blockchain. So if I want, I can hook up my machine into the current blockchain network, and I can also participate in solving the computational problem that comes, and in creating transactions, and in creating blocks in the network. So I do not need anybody's approval. I do not need anybody's permission. Almost everything is transparent. All the blocks are out there, visible to everyone. All transactions that have been made from the time the blockchain started to now, they're all visible to everybody. So that's what public blockchains are. And the other end of, well, not the complete other spectrum, but then you have these permission blockchains who sort of work in closed ecosystem. So in permission blockchain, not everybody can come in and they can join the network. You have certain authorized users who can come in and who can join the network after taking approval from whoever is controlling the entire network, or there's going to be a group of parties who control the entire network. So they are like gated communities. And permission blockchains are the ones which are preferred by large enterprises. So, for example, let's say if you want banks to use some sort of a network to be able to verify documents, for example, then they would probably create their own consortia. They'll create their own permissioned blockchain, and as is obvious, they would not want anybody to come in and be able to see what is going on between them, because there's sensitive customer information that is being disclosed. And in fact, in permission blockchains or in permission networks, you can even have a case where, let's say you have A, B, C, and D operating in that network. What happens between A and B might not even be visible to C. So A and B can have transaction X, which is not visible to C and D, and A and B can have transaction Y, which is actually visible in the entire network. So you have those knobs and those switches and those granular control as to who can see what and who can, and what sort of transaction do you want to be available to everybody who's participating in the network, and what sort of transaction would you want to be private between just the parties who are interacting with each other. A very famous example of permission blockchain is Hyperledger Fabric. And there are several under the Hyperledger umbrella. So, but Fabric is the one that is the most popular currently, but several are catching up. So now let's move on to the next slide. Is blockchain a bubble? So this is where things get a little interesting. So blockchain as of today have several technical issues. It's slow, it's getting bloated, and plus there are several security issues as well. You guys might have heard about the 51% attack that is possible in any blockchain, especially in Bitcoin and Ethereum. There was a lot of talk about this. There are like few mining pools who can all converge together and have more than 51% hash rate, which kills the security of blockchain. Plus, there are also talks about how quantum computing can come in and can pretty much shake up the entire foundation of blockchain. So blockchain is all about encryption and cryptography. And with the leaps that have been made in quantum computing, it's going to become very easy to crack such codes or such keys. But despite all of this limitation, there are a lot of very smart people currently working to solve these technical challenges. So to solve the challenge of scalability, a transaction on Ethereum takes probably 30 seconds, whereas if you do a transaction on Paytm, it's probably instantaneous, right? Similarly, the size of blockchain is also increasing immensely, especially, again, this is the case with Ethereum, where you have all these smart contracts and the blockchain is just bloating exponentially. So while there are these technical issues, there are several organizations who are working to solve these technical issues. We have also tried to solve at least the scalability part of it. But my personal belief is that the technology issues will get resolved. Technology is always quite deterministic. However, the actual challenges for the industries are more on the business implementation side of things. And the biggest one by far is probably the lack of awareness about the technology. Especially, there's a widespread lack of understanding of how it works. This lack of understanding has resulted in a huge confusion among the masses. And now this confusion is actually getting quite subrooted in their subconscious. Because of all these misleading articles on the web, this active community of hypermongers, blockchain has been reduced to just one single use case, or it has been equated with just one single word, which is cryptocurrency. Even in industry circle, you'll find many established people equate blockchain to cryptocurrency, or even just Bitcoin, which is probably the next most famous implementation. Plus, all these bad ICOs which we had, they made a mockery out of the technology. And this misconception is harming the adoption of technology. It is becoming a sort of blockade in how the technology could get adopted in several of the real use cases that we might have. And a lot of analysts out there, they're calling, they're equating the future of the entire blockchain technology as the repeat of the dot-com bubble burst. So what was a bubble and how did it burst? One of the best definition of bubble is by the American economist Robert J. Schiller, who says, and I quote, a bubble is a situation in which news of price increases spurs investor enthusiasm, which spreads by psychological contagion from person to person, in the process amplifying stories that might justify the price increase, and thereby bringing in a larger and larger class of investors who, despite doubts about the real value of an investment, are drawn to it partially by envy of other successes and partly through a gambler's excitement. So we need to go back. We need to probably go back around 2-3 decades to understand what the context is. Now, in 1997, some experts speculated that the internet was a bottomless pit of cash. And internet startups required very little specialty and they promised super high rewards. So let's say if you throw $50,000 at a company that has a .com domain name, speculation could place them at a $500K in yearly revenues. That's easy money, right? 10x. Right? Technically, at least it was. However, very, very few of these startups ever get listed on NASDAQ. And the ones that did were just insanely high, purely on speculation. So investors were eager to invest at pretty much any valuation at that point of time in any .com company, especially if it had an internet-related prefix or a .com to its suffix. Now, of course, the business was never as good as what people were led to believe. The fundamental part of any business is sales, and the same should have been for these internet businesses as well. They should have been selling things like you do on eBay or Amazon. But that's just not the kind of profit model that people were going with. People wanted to make easy money by offering sort of free services. And there came the rise of all these web hosting companies like GeoCities, AngelFire, and Tripod. And people built their website with their services and they spread it to everyone that they can. After that came the speculation part, the maybes, ifs. Maybe the website will get 1,000 hits a month, maybe more. Now, let's say if you have small investment in 1,000 of them, you'll probably have 10 million hits a month. Investors like the sound of hits. To an investor, this hits sounded like views, which in turn meant advertising views. So now imagine a billboard that 1 million people see in a month. And now it's going to cost you a fraction of the cost of that billboard. It sounds great, correct? But in reality, the same person might just pass a billboard 1 million times. Well, not today with the rising fuel cost, but in reality or theoretically, that's possible, right? And that's just exactly what it was happening on the early internet. So the same person could actually visit 1,000 times. And forget even a person. A bot could probably go there and could refresh the same page 1,000 times and would not even have seen the banner or the advertising stuff that is kept on the website. Whereas advertisers were paying for this view. And there was a ridiculous amount of money that was being lost to all such fake views. So businesses would, they'll be guaranteed certain traffic by these advertising firms, who would in turn have all these pop-up ads show up on all sort of websites. So you have this giant website investing in advertising for their personal website and their businesses, except that this advertising was not actually returning or was not actually converting into any real sale or any extra sale. Soon, businesses realized that what they actually wanted was not hits, not the same guy refreshing their page, or not the bot coming in and refreshing their page. Rather, what they wanted was unique impressions on their websites. Right? That's what you're interested in. Your billboard being seen by actual 1 million unique people. So they stopped spending money on all this web advertisement. And all these advertising firms, they bellied up, and websites with their own advertising package, they all started to crumble. With this advertising gone, it meant that a lot of websites that relied entirely on advertising for sale, they had to go as well. And that's when the bubble burst. Boom. So after the bubble burst, the way in which we do business on the internet, it fundamentally changed. So there was no longer people coming in to make a 10x return in a day, in a month, or in a quarter. People learned that the internet wasn't a place where you could just make money just by being there on the internet. You actually had to deliver some value. It actually had to have some real world implication. There has to be some solution. You had to make somebody's life easier. And then came the rise of cryptocurrencies. So initially, the public perception about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was also very fuzzy. There was this lot of hype and enthusiasm all around. There was skepticism, but in general, there was a lot of optimism. People believe that this is what is going to change the world. This is what the future of financial world is. Cryptocurrency is the next step towards exchange of value, is what it's being called. It's probably the best digital asset to own right now. And then in late 2017, when Bitcoin was on its bull run reaching $20,000, all these ICOs started coming up. So there were a lot of people who had missed out on Bitcoin when Bitcoin initially came up. So they had not invested and they were feeling left out. They were feeling that, oh, had I invested in Bitcoin 5 years ago, I would have been a billionaire. So now when all these altcoins started coming up and all of these altcoins started promising how their technology is better than Bitcoin, how they solve the scalability problem that better than Bitcoin, how they have a better consensus algorithm, how they do not bloat like Ethereum, how they are the fastest, how they allow several people to come in. You had all of these, so many projects coming up, so many altcoins coming up. And people wanted to cash out this time. So there was this FOMO, there was this fear of missing out. So everybody started putting their money into any new ICO that was coming out there. But when reality hit, all this optimism quickly diminished as everyone realized the limitation. So we had all these ICO scams, we have all these failed projects, we had projects that had started but did not reach anywhere. Everything went into limbo. And people realized that it's going to take a lot more than just a Bitcoin clone to create some sort of a real impact in this world. Several people left the scene. People started pulling money. Startups who used to offer these wallets and exchanges to interact with all these blockchains, they all vanished. Vendors used to accept payment in cryptocurrencies, no longer accepted cryptos. And we entered this bear run. The entire sentiment turned very negative. So this meteoric rise of cryptocurrency was followed by a meteoric fail as well. Now, I'm going to tell you a story that will probably help you understand this a little better. So like every story, this story also starts with, once upon a time in a village, there was a man. He came to the village and he announced that he is going to buy squirrels for $10 each. So this man claimed to be a scientist, and he claimed that his research had shown that the squirrel's odor had medicinal values. It stops people from aging. And in order to prove that, he came up with big documents with complicated calculations and all these weird diagrams, very nice looking articles, and things that were very difficult to understand, big mathematical equations that all prove that yes, squirrel's odor could stop aging. So the villagers, they just skimmed over it. And seeing that there were so many squirrels around, they thought, yeah, why not? Let's just catch squirrels, give the man squirrel and we'll take the $10 and go. So the villagers went about catching squirrels, and soon the number of squirrels, it became low, right? So now what this man did was he raised his price. He said that instead of $10, now I'm going to give you $20 for every squirrel, because now it's going to be hard to catch the squirrels. But now that the price increased, the villagers put in even more efforts to catch the squirrels. So they started catching again and again. But again, a point in time came when almost all the squirrels had been caught. So the villagers got exhausted and they went back to their farming business. So now what he did was he again increased the price. He said, now from $20, I'm going to make it $25 or even $30 if you go and get me the squirrels. So there were very few squirrels left, but even the ones that were left, the villagers went chasing after them and they got the squirrels and they gave to the man. Now there were almost 0 squirrels left. So now the scientist said that, okay, you know what? If you are going to get me a squirrel, I'm going to give you $50 this time. However, I have to go to the city. I have some important assignments in the city, and I need to meet all these big guys, all these big pharma companies who are going to buy this squirrel odor and convert this into the new potion. So I need to go to the city, but my assistant is going to be here, and you can take the $50 from my assistant. Now, what the assistant did was that he told the villagers, look, there are no squirrels left. However, if you look at this cage, I have so many squirrels. Why don't you do one thing? You buy all these squirrels from me at $35, and then when the scientist comes, you sell it to him at $50. You make a profit of $15, right? The villagers all agreed, yeah, this looked like a very good deal. So they all came in, they put all of their saving, and they gave it to the assistant and bought all the squirrels for $35. Now, guess what? The assistant and the scientist never returned. I think this would probably give you a better understanding as to what happened during that entire ICO bubble. So, to discuss this in deep, there were 10 major reasons behind why the ICO trend came to a screeching halt that it did. The first is marketing and development imbalance. So the development team or good crypto projects did not focus on marketing at all. Whereas projects which were completely scam, they had amazing marketing teams. So you never had that balance between marketing and development. And imbalance on both sides, they harmed all the good projects out there. Second is ease of use. So unless I can just walk into a store and just raise my card like this and make the payment, I'm not going to be interested, right? If imagine there are like multiple cards that you already have. Now imagine besides those bank accounts card, you also have to manage cards which has 20 cryptos and which manages the prices of crypto on 20 different exchanges. It's just going to be astronomically difficult for a normal user to be doing. So that was also the problem. It was not easy to use at all. Then PR issues. So in something as volatile as crypto, PR is very, very mandatory. But there was absolutely no damage control done for good crypto PR projects when things hit the fan. They didn't have a proper PR team. UI UX. Well, most of these crypto projects, they were built by geeky developers, and developers, they were all interested in bringing all these interesting cryptographic algorithms, but no one actually focused on the user experience. What that meant was that 99% of the population could not use crypto projects. This was just insanely difficult to do it. In this era, we live in an era where you can download Paytm, link it to your bank, and pay for everything. And it takes you less than 2 to 3 minutes. So crypto projects also had to be at the same level, if not better. For example, let's say you have two McDonald's, one by one, side by side. There is one which has a drive-through and there is one which does not have a drive-through. Which one would you choose? Well, I would probably choose the one which has the drive-through, right? Even if they're all the equal, why should I go through these extra steps? That was the case with crypto as well. If I could do something so simply on the existing projects or the existing technologies, why would I bother and go into crypto to use that? Then there was this problem of development hell. So most of the development team in crypto project thought that a 5+ year development cycle is fine enough. Why? Because they had millions of dollars in funding. So why bother to release? Let's just keep on building without releasing anything to the users ever. And that's where all the money went. Reputation. So crypto earned a bad reputation after the ICO scam. A lot of people lost a lot of their savings in crypto in 2017, 2018. Then there was learning risks. So the helpful people in the community, they were stuck explaining all those convoluted mechanisms to people who might not have a strong background in tech. So remember those time in the 80s and 90s when having a home PC and plugging it in involved jumping through hundreds of hurdles? And this was quite similar to that. And only that instead of the risk of losing time, here you lost all your money if you made one mistake. Then was FUD. So fake FUD had way too much of a grasp on the market and the community. In fact, the majority of the crashes that we noticed were all because of fake news. So there was this news, Korea bans crypto. And then as soon as that spread, everybody is tanking down, everybody's pulling out, people are crashing. Meanwhile, all these Korean guys are tweeting, guys, it's fake news, it's fake news. So all that fake FUD led to a lot of disaster. Scams, well, most ICOs were run by scammers. And there is the saying that it only takes a few bad apples to leave a bad taste, whereas in crypto, we had a lot of bad apples. Safety, well, unless crypto hits another bull run, people won't be coming back. Even right now, if you open coin360.io, the graph still looks like a massive pump and dump scheme. Laymen need to be assured that even if you lose money right now, they are going to make money in the future. So it's going to be cyclic. The bear market will eventually be followed by the bull market, and they can invest safely. We are seeing another bull run right now where Bitcoin is touching the 50K mark. However, most of the altcoins are not doing that great. So people who invested money in all those scammy ICOs or those altcoins, they have lost. They have not really made via this bull run. So now I think what we have highlighted is that the problem is with cryptocurrencies, right? All these scams, all these ICOs, everything had to do with cryptocurrency, not blockchain really. And this is where this misconception is harming the technology. People are equating the cryptocurrency bubble as blockchain bubble. And before jumping on the hype wagon or deciding to maintain a distance from it, what industries really need to do is they should understand that cryptocurrency is just one use case. It's probably the most widespread use case, probably the most popular use case, but it is only one use case of blockchain technology. And you should not write off for technology just because of a few rogue players coming in or because of these scamming ICOs. There is a lot more to blockchain than just cryptocurrencies. At the same hand, you also need to understand that blockchain is not exactly a magic unicorn, which will change every single system on the planet. No, it will not. It's not going to, blockchain cannot fly you a plane, right? So the existing systems that are moving towards adopting blockchain, they can all exist even without blockchain. However, blockchain does add a few layers of automation security to them. So it does make things better. And there is this simple thing, take in, take out. So if a new, better and improved technology is going to come in, like blockchain, then the technology is going to come in and replace the older technology that's out there. So at Decode, when I started leading the blockchain practice, my first task was to understand the mindset of SMEs and these large enterprises and how they adopt a new technology. The idea was to understand how businesses in these industries react to when a new technology comes on the scene. So we read a lot of research and reports, and we talked to CIOs, we went through their surveys and details. And the findings were pretty much on the expected lines. So SMEs wanted to get associated with blockchain. Why? Because it increased their valuation, it made them sound more glamorous. Investors came in quite easily when they heard about blockchain. Whereas large enterprises, they always only look for value investment. So their interest was based around 2 points. First is, would this technology help me save money or generate money? And the second is, would it help me in compliance purposes? So talking to the whales and sharks who were interested in blockchain, I had another major takeaway, which is for large enterprises, arguments like thought leadership and technology for good, blah, 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 they're meaningless. All the conversation is around one single question for any big organization. Where's the money? That's the question. Where is the money? So now the money we are talking about isn't only about the monetary value. So the money question is more on the lines of how my business process could actually benefit from blockchain technology. One of the most common questions that I used to face is there something in blockchain, something that's going to make it cheaper for me, something that's going to become faster, or is there a new feature that I'm not aware about? And rightly so. The waste the money question is the fundamental part of any business. What's the value? Sorry. How is the business benefiting from this? Like, what are the long-term effects? What are the short-term effects? And to answer this one, no matter how much any blockchain company would try to convince you, there are no short-term impacts. So blockchain is not a magic unicorn. Just reiterate it again. It's just a better mousetrap. It's an advanced mousetrap. And housekeepers are investing in it because the mouses are evolving. And there would be a time when the traditional mousetrap would be useless. So you need to move to the more advanced mousetrap, which is what probably blockchain is. And so I'll not run around the circles and tell you the answers of a couple of questions that must have popped in your mind currently. Yes, this blockchain thing is cheaper in the long run. And yes, it has a couple of brilliant features that overshadow its current sluggishness, the slowness, the bloatness that we all talked about. But then there are impatient businesses and there are patient businesses. The impatient one are those who want to see if the current capabilities of blockchain could revamp their businesses. Whereas the patient ones, they take it slowly. And I think the patient ones are the one who would actually succeed. So the best way to find out if blockchain actually fits your business or adds value to your processes is only one. Managers need to identify value by assessing the feasibility at a very, very granular level. You need to get your hands dirty. You need to sit with your executive teams and see which are the areas in your business process that can actually benefit from what all blockchain brings. And what this will require is an understanding of specific use cases within selected industry. So let's see one use case for blockchain. So I have some stats here. Now, a recent survey found out that 78% of respondents in a particular sector were manually counting inventory in their supply chain at some point, and only 17% stated their organization had an automated technology system. So this odd statistic here provides a very clear picture that despite digitization of the industry, supply chain is still not automated in the way it should be. And in similar surveys, supply chain managers who embrace technology said that they would see an exponential growth if everything becomes automated. And that is where I think companies can implement a supply chain management solution using blockchain technology. So we can use blockchain to add value in several ways. For example, helping with the dichotomy of privacy and transparency, real-time automated transaction using smart contracts, having corruption-free, tamper-proof ledger of manifest, reduction in human error across the board. So for instance, there is this burden of verifying $11 billion worth of international goods that come into US every day. Now imagine if you could somehow combine IoT and blockchain. IoT is basically Internet of Things. So imagine if you can somehow, each of these items, they can have an RFID tag associated to them. And that RFID tag puts information directly into the blockchain. So then you have an unalterable record of how the thing originated from where to where. That's immense, right? So then the customer knows exactly what they bought from where. Those are the sort of things where blockchain is going to shine. So whenever you have two machines involved, whenever there is a machine-to-machine transaction happening, and whenever these machines need to trust each other, that's where blockchain is going to come in, and that's where it's going to automate trust between those two machines. That's where you're going to see a lot of value being generated from blockchain. Well, most of this is futuristic. Gartner predicts that the blockchain market would be at least $3 trillion by 2030. And it says that it's probably 10 to 20% of global economic infrastructure is going to run on blockchain by the year 2030. Now, the regulatory framework might make it a little difficult or might slow it down. You might have heard about the Indian government planning to ban crypto. So if you read, Indian government does not like crypto. However, based on whatever interaction I have had with NISG and folks out there, they love blockchain and they're really thinking through blockchain very, very, very thoughtfully, and they're really focused on how they can use blockchain to improve things, to improve governance processes and all of it. And we have different legislations, different governments responding differently to blockchain. So you have Singapore, which is very pro blockchain, whereas you have countries like US, which are a little very. So it's going to be an interesting journey as to how regulators see or how regulators perceive blockchain technology. But just the fact that regulators are taking notice is again something that's pretty exciting and something which is very, very optimistic for the industry or the technology as a whole. So I think we're just reaching time, and I think that's all that I wanted to cover. So thank you once again for hearing me out and for this opportunity to interact with you guys. I'm not sure, Nidish, if we have time for a Q&A session.
So we have some questions from the audience that they sent me on chat. So I can maybe ask two questions because of in the interest of time, we can maybe have two questions answered.
Sure.
Okay. So this question is from Nirbhay. So as you talked about the potential ban on crypto and with it looming, how do you think the stablecoin landscape will change in India in the future? So with government banning cryptos, how do we think that it will shape in the future?
Well, if government bans crypto, then it does not matter whether you have a stable coin or whether you have Bitcoin or Ethereum. Crypto is just not going to take picture. Now, the government's ban of crypto is not because of the technology. It is because the government wants to protect investors. And since a lot of investors lost a lot of their money in the ICO scam, the government feels that bringing crypto to something like India could result in a lot of issues. You could have this dark web, you could have all these transactions happening on crypto, which the government cannot audit. So I think if the government bans crypto, the stable coins are doomed as well. None of them would be able to operate. The government might in future bring its own stable coin. The rupee could probably be on the blockchain technology as well. We never know though. Otherwise, stable coins have a very good future because I know that most people a lot of vendors have started accepting stable coins. And now that Paytm has also started supporting Bitcoin, stable coins, to me, the future of stable coins looks really good. The ones that have a solid backing, not the ones which are all fake or scam. I hope that answers.
Yes, sir. So we'll just take another question and then maybe we can end the session. But this question is from Karan. So he's asking, other than real estate, what would be other major applications of blockchain apart from cryptocurrencies? Obviously.
Oh, there are a lot. There are several use cases for blockchain. I think supply chain is one where it's really going to shine, confirming the veracity of where the good was produced. And there are a lot of POCs being done by major companies. I know Starbucks is doing one. I know Merckx is doing one. Pharma industry is doing one. So that's one use case. Co-owning an asset, that's also a very big use case. Decentralized finance, which is currently the most hot topic, where instead of all these central institution giving loans out and everything, you and I can participate in a way in decentralized finance, and that we could be brokering an insurance deal or we could be providing the liquidity for insurance. So that's coming up. Real estate is just one of the things, but there are several future contracts that could be done on blockchain. The entire settlement that happens. So currently, when you make a settlement, or currently when you make a transaction on Visa or MasterCard, it takes almost 3 days for that settlement to happen. All of that could happen instantly on blockchain. So there are a lot. It's impossible to cover it in a couple of minutes.
All right, sir. So I think we can end with the session. So on behalf of the Backwaters team, thank you for taking the time out to enlighten all of us about blockchain, its use case, and its real life use case, also relating it with how you met blockchain. And I would also like to thank everyone who took the time out to join us today, and hope you all had an insightful session. Thank you all for coming, and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Nidish, for having me. Thanks.
Thank you. And